Jayme Malynn Bowen was a 22-year-old mother of two from Columbus, Ohio. On April 10th, 2014, she was at her sister's, then decided to walk to her mother's, a 10-minute trip. Jayme left the house. A neighbor saw her walk past his place. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. I remember way back in 2002 getting a gift from my sister Diane. It was the Law & Order interactive mystery game, Dead on the Money. Are you familiar with it? Very rudimentary by today's standards, but for a guy like me who prefers more cerebral stuff than first-person shooter games, it was perfect. She got me the game Myst as well. But in the Law & Order game, the goal wasn't to just find all the clues and make the murder charge stick. The other part of it, at the crime scene in particular, was to distinguish the relevant facts from the irrelevant ones. And that was difficult and made the game what it is. In real life, the situation is way more difficult. How to decide what leads to follow and which leads not to. I bring this up because in the disappearance of Jayme Bowen, there is a lot of information, especially with all the similar crimes and disappearances in Chillicothe, Ohio, not far from Columbus. But is what happened in that city south of where Jayme disappeared relevant at all? Because many people, police included, think it is. You, the listeners, will be asked to determine if authorities are correct. Are they following the right lead? And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's site, charleyproject.org. Jayme Bowen, in the couple years leading up to her disappearance, had a turbulent life. The father of her firstborn son was shot and killed by police. She had developed a drug addiction but then beat it by going to rehab. And another man attempted to control her and alienate her from her family. And all this before she was 22 years old. So, on the morning of April 10th, 2014, she was with her sister Kay at Kay's house. Jayme had spent the night there. At 10:45 a.m., Jayme decided to walk from Kay's back to their mother's, about 10 minutes away. Jayme didn't like walking the streets of Parsons and Stewart, but had to due to Kay loaning her truck out to an acquaintance. Jayme left, taking Kay's phone with her. At about 11 a.m., Kay called Jayme from her house phone. There was no answer. She then called their mothers. Jayme had not arrived yet. Worried, their mother drove over and picked up Kay. They looked for Jayme. She was never seen again. In addition to the Chillicothe crimes that bear a resemblance to Jayme's disappearance, the following issues cloud what actually happened that day. A local man claiming he saw Jayme snatched off the street. A United States postal worker who was giving money out to young women in the neighborhood, including Jayme. A so-called anti-sex trafficking advocate who allegedly knew Jayme and hangs out with prostitutes in her neighborhood. And a local drug dealer who knew Jayme and her sister a little too well. Jayme's family believes she may have been sex trafficked. Or worse. Her case remains unsolved. The interview for this episode is with Jayme's mother, Nancy Bowen, and a family friend, Janet Common. Unfound News. Volume 3 is out. Phew. Took longer than I expected. It covers the disappearances of Jeff Nichols, Rebecca Gary, James Walker, Teresa Butler, Charlotte Paulus, and Lola Catherine Fry. Please find it on Amazon in both ebook and print form. Next, I hope you all went to triblive.com to read about the disappearance of Kathleen Kelly from Springdale, Pennsylvania in 1981. That story continues Unfound's work with Trib Total Media to feature cases from Western Pennsylvania. So please check it out. Finally, as I'm sure all of you already know, The original Night Stalker, it seems, has been caught. I have to say I was fairly confident that if I lived to be 80, he would be identified in my lifetime. However, I had no idea whether he would be alive or not. Well, he's alive and now in California custody. Even though, at least to our knowledge, Joseph James D'Angelo hasn't been involved in any disappearances, I think there is much that can be learned from his violent crime spree. And I'm sure I'll be talking about those lessons in the coming months. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Podomatic, Stitcher, Podbean, and Spotify. In particular, please join us on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for the Unfound Facebook Live video show, which is hosted on the Unfound podcast page, not in the private group. The email address, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. The website, unfoundpodcast.com. Please check out the secret Stephen Kocher episode. The website at Trib Total Media, triblive.com/news/unfound. Unfound has Patreon and PayPal accounts. Your contributions provide for many of the items guests have received so far. I cannot thank all of Unfound supporters enough. Our most recent contributors are Stephanie, Carletta, and Catherine. Unfound Merchandise, Volumes 1, 2, and 3 on Amazon in both paperback and ebook form. Let's try to work on getting some great reviews for Volumes 2 and 3. If you've bought them, please give them a nice review. The playing cards, go to makeplayingcards.com/sell/Unfound podcast. Shirts for almost all Unfound's cases at unfound-podcast.myshopify.com. This includes the flagship t-shirt, The First Year Cases. That's a collage of everyone from Suzanne Lyle to Jennifer Wilkerson. Please check it out. And please mention Unfound on all true crime Facebook pages and other websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Nancy Bowen and a family friend, Janet Common. Nancy, welcome to Unfound.
Well, thank you for having me.
And Janet, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to start first with Nancy, and then Janet, I'm going to bring you into the conversation in a little bit. So if you could, just stay patient. Nancy, tell the listeners a little bit about your daughter, Jayme.
Jayme is the baby of the family. She was 22 years old when she left her older sister's house to come home, less than a 10-minute walk at 10:45 in the morning on a very busy street and disappeared off the face of this earth.
Yeah.
We have no information, nothing 4 years later.
What was Jayme into when you were raising her? First of all, how many children do you have, Nancy?
I have 4.
4 children.
They are, yes, I had 2 that were older, and then 18 years later, we had 2 more. And Jayme was the baby of all of them.
Huh.
And Jayme has 2 sons herself.
That's a little similar to my situation. My brothers and my sister are like 18 to 20 years older than me as well. So I kind of know a little bit what that's like. I'm the baby of the family as well. What was she into as a little girl? Barbies, or what was she into? Her stuff.
Just everything. She was one of those go-getter, feisty little kids. Straight A student, the perfect little next-door kid. And, everybody just loved her. She was just into anything and everything.
Yeah.
The teachers tried to enroll her in beauty contests, and, I didn't feel it was appropriate for her age at the time. But, she's always had friends and everything. There's just the kid next door that everybody knew and watched grow up.
And she was tiny. She was only like 5 feet tall, right?
4'11" and about 100 pounds. Very small.
Just little. Is that kind of the way your entire family is, or
Was she unique?
She's actually the smallest one.
Uh-huh.
You know, her sister's probably 5'6", 125, and you know her brothers are bigger. But she was just, I'm going to say she took after her grandmother. Her grandmother's like 4'11" also. But I mean, she kind of stood out in the crowd because she had long blonde natural hair to her waist, or natural blonde, should I say, and then, you know, big blue eyes, but she was, like, friendly to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's what's created the situation we have, or I just, you know, you get so many reasons and excuses and scenarios and gossip, and makes me crazy.
Yeah.
This is not supposed to happen.
No, it's not. No, it's not. If I could just get into Jayme's background just a little bit more. She went to high school. Did she graduate? What did she do?
No, she didn't graduate. She was going to school for that. And she ended up having to go to work. And she had been working a few places, and then the last job she had when she disappeared was at a thing called the Free Store, like a church mission that donates to needy people and stuff, and she was working there until like a few days before she disappeared.
Okay.
And, you know, everybody, they were all happy with her. I mean, you know, she'd done a job, she treated the public was happy with her and things like that. She was bubbly, cheerful, and that old saying, dingy blonde, she fit into it so good.
Okay. But she also was a mother. I mean, you had to be excited as her mother, becoming a grandmother when she had not one but two boys. We don't want to mention their names, but tell the listeners maybe a little bit about her two boys and how old were they when she disappeared.
The oldest one was only 4 when she disappeared, and he lives with me. He's 8 now.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to school, and he's principal award, and, you know, he's a perfect student. But he has a lot of separation anxiety and depression, and he knew his mom, you know, did things with her, played games, went places, and the baby wasn't quite 2 years old. So, you know, he's always been taught who she is. But as far as having memories of her and things like that, I don't think he actually does.
All right. And who does the younger boy live with now, Nancy?
He lives with his other grandmother.
Okay. So she had 2 boys, but excuse me, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, the 2 boys have been separated. They see each other, but, you know, they don't live together, but, you know, they know their brothers, they see each other, and, you know, things like that, so it's not like they're strangers.
Okay, good. Now, with Jayme, the man that she had, was it the first or second child, he was actually shot by the cops at some point?
The second.
The second?
Yes, the second one. Yes, he had been in a bar, from what I gather. He had stopped in with some friends. Somebody had bought a pistol or a gun, and they were arguing with their girlfriend and asked him to hold it. And at closing time, the little argument went out onto the street, and the police officers stopped, and someone said that he had a gun, and they shot him and killed him. I believe it was 8 times. But there's witnesses that says he had laid it on the ground and was starting to raise back up when they opened fire on him. So, you know, there's so many versions of the story, but he died a few days before his 23rd birthday.
Oh, my.
And, I mean, as a person, wonderful, very wonderful.
And were Jayme and he still a couple when this happened?
Yes, the baby was 5 weeks old when that happened.
Oh, my. So this happened how long before her disappearance? A few years?
About 2 years, yeah. It happened in July of 2012.
Okay. Thank you for that. And the other father, he is still alive?
Yes, he actually wasn't ready to be a father when Jayme got pregnant.
Okay.
And he's never stood up, stepped up, or said anything. So Jaden calls his grandpa Daddy, but he knows the difference. And he actually thinks George, the other little boy's dad, was his dad.
Oh, my.
So,
Okay.
that's going to be more of an upset on him later in life when he knows the truth.
Okay. And
so
please continue. Please.
Yeah, the older son, he has a lot of, issues. He just prays for his mom to come back.
Yeah.
And it's so sad because, he's very heartbroken.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to her, or whoever's got her, or whatever, they devastated many people and ruined a lot of lives with whatever's happened.
Just to ask you point blank, this other father who is still with us, do you suspect him in Jayme's disappearance at all?
No.
None.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Before we get into just some of the facts of the day that Jayme disappeared, we do have to touch upon this, and this isn't maybe, if a lot of people saw the Gone series in which they devoted, I think, the 4th episode at least a little bit to Jayme's disappearance. And we're going to talk about the Chillicothe girls. I'll just touch upon this. But Jayme did have some drug issues, but, she was trying to fight them. She was trying to go to rehab. I mean, do you remember, the first time you suspected that she might be have an addiction?
It was right after her oldest son was born, and she went through rehab. She always put herself in rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was pregnant with her second son, she was like a month pregnant or something like that. She went to the hospital, and they prescribed her medicine, and they sent her to a rehab in Portsmouth. She volunteered, she wanted to go. And she went down there, and it didn't work out. She said that just wasn't the place for her to be. Said that their babies were born stillborn, and a lot of people were being faced with prison sentences. They were being forced to be there. And so she came back home.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd only spent like a month or so down there. And at this point in time, that rehab is the only connection that we can find between Jayme and the girls in Chillicothe.
Right.
Is, I guess, at one point in time, all of them had been to that rehab at one time.
And did, to your knowledge, once again, this is just Jayme's episode. We're not going to cover all of those girls. Those other women have gotten a lot of attention. We're just concentrating on Jayme today. But to your knowledge, did Jayme know any of those women who disappeared or were found murdered down in Chillicothe?
No, not at all.
Not any of them. Okay. All right. So she went to rehab. She was trying to clean herself up. You said that she was working, but what was going on with Jayme at the time of her disappearance? What was going on in her life? What do you remember about those maybe few days before she disappeared?
She had actually went through rehab in like June or July and gotten clean. And she had been clean, but she started hanging out with her sister about a week or so before she disappeared.
Hmm.
And evidently she had got back on drugs.
Okay.
And it's not like she owed somebody for drugs. It's not like she OD'd and, they done something with her. It's just, nobody knows what happened, but
Right.
I'm not even sure that I'm going to sit here and tell you drugs played a part in it, because I have no reason,
Yeah, we just don't know.
what happened.
Sure, we just don't know. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been, it could have been something to do with drugs, but, again, you don't know.
Okay. Was she living? So you said that she was going over to her sister's, and as you already stated, this is a sister that is 18 years older than Jayme is.
About 20.
About
Yeah,
20
about
years.
20
Okay.
years older.
Okay. Was she living at your place? Where was Jayme living these days? Those days.
She lived with me.
All right. So you got to see her every day.
Yes.
All right. Great. And how was the relationship going with her boys?
With her boys, oh, she loved them babies to pieces. There was nothing like them, and she just told them, I've got letters where she's wrote, I'm going to rehab so we can have a better life, and promises like that she had made them, and things. She just worshipped the ground they walked on.
Yeah.
And the oldest one, like I said, when it was bad winter days, couldn't play, couldn't do anything, they would ride on a bus, like public transportation. They would just ride around all day. If it was nothing but to the little park on the corner. And, she'd take him and do stuff with him, play with him. She, like, was a kid herself. She'd play the video games. She taught the oldest one how to play video games. And he's a master at it now.
Okay. Huh. To your knowledge, at the time of her disappearance, we've already talked about the one father who was shot by cops, and then the other guy who, although they had a child together, he has not had a lot of any influence in his son's life at all. Was Jayme seeing any men at the time of her disappearance, to your knowledge?
She had started dating a guy back around October, I guess, and she dated him through Christmas, and he lived like a suburb or something. I'm going to say Hilliard, on the outskirts of Columbus, and she lived here, and, they were both trying to work, and there wasn't a lot of time to see each other, and they just kind of drifted apart, but it was on good terms. They still wrote each other and talked to each other through Facebook and stuff like that, but, there was nothing there about him that would ring any bells or any alarms, and, to this day, he more or less posts Jayme missing, and he still has all the I love you messages that they had wrote each other on his Facebook page.
Okay.
So,
all right.
They parted on good terms.
Okay. Do you know maybe the last time that she actually saw him in person before she disappeared? Would it have been like weeks before, months before?
Probably months. I'm going to say sometime during the month of January.
All right, so like 4 months before.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's move up to the day of the disappearance, and maybe we should just establish this first. This area in which she disappeared, it's an area that you still live in to this day, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is near the intersections of Parsons and Stewart and Columbus. This is a rough area of town, isn't it?
It borders on a very famous German village area, but after you hit Parsons, if you go south, the area changes quite a bit. So, yes, it is rough and tough.
Okay.
Once you hit Parsons.
Because to mention the Gone series, if people don't know what I'm talking about, maybe I should tell the listeners for a moment. This series Gone focused on women in Chillicothe, Ohio, who disappeared. But during the coverage of this, they also went up to Columbus, and they did some filming on Parsons Street, and they did talk about prostitution, other things in this area. Would you say that TV show portrayed that area correctly, Nancy?
Yes, pretty much, yes.
Pretty much, okay.
There is a lot of prostitution and drugs and stuff in this area now.
Okay. All right. So we have to remember that Jayme, this is where she was. And we'll get into those facts in a second. What happened the day before? Did she went over to her sister Kay's the day before, correct?
Yes. They had stopped at my house about 8:30 that night, and she told me she was going back to Kay's. You know, it's like, good night, bye, I love you, you know, same thing anytime she left. And she called me about 10:30, told me that they were in for the night. And that was the last time I had talked to her until about 11:15 the next day is when I found out Jayme was missing. She had left her sister's house about 10:45 that morning, and she had used her sister's cell phone. She was going to walk home to get some money and cigarettes from me because I got off work early that day. And like 15 minutes later, my older daughter called, and my mom lives here with me, and she had answered the phone and told her Jayme wasn't here. So Kay said the first time she called the phone, it rang and went to voicemail. Well, after she called here and Jayme wasn't here, she tried the phone again, and at that time, it just went straight to voicemail. It never rang. Well, I came in at 11:15 when Kay called the second time, and she told me what had happened, and I went and picked Kay up, and we went looking for Jayme. So within a half hour of her leaving my daughter's house and me coming home, we were looking for Jayme. And we knocked on doors, drove up and down streets, alleys, corners, stopped everybody on the street and everything, and we came up with nothing. And to this day, that's what we still have, nothing.
If I could just ask you a few questions about that morning. Did Jayme have her own phone, or you said that she took Kay's phone with her when she was going to be walking to your house, so she didn't have her own phone, or what was the situation?
She hadn't got paid to pay the bill on it, so it was turned off, is why she used Kay's phone.
Okay. And did you know that Jayme's plan was to walk over to your house that morning? Did she or Kay call you like beforehand saying, you know what, Jayme, or Jayme, if she called you herself, said, I'm going to be walking over to your house, Ma, I'll be there in a little while. Did you know that she was coming over that morning?
No, I didn't, until I came home from work, and that's when Kay told me she had left to come here, you know, a half hour prior, and the phone wasn't being answered or anything like that. And Jayme's the type, she don't normally walk anywhere, and if she did, she takes a phone, and most of the time she'll call you and talk to you while she walks. You know, if she goes to the store, like she came from Kay's that day. I mean, less than a 10-minute walk, so, you know, the cameras weren't checked in the area. Since that time, there's been vacant homes and business and bars and stuff. A whole city block had been torn out to put in a new public library. So, you know, that changed a lot of things, too.
Right.
And where do you go on a busy intersection at 10:45 in the morning? What happens to you? I mean, she's little. I don't know if they thought she was a school kid, because there's like a high school a couple blocks from there. And, you know, they were running back and forth to the stores and stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I just cannot imagine what has happened to her.
If I may ask you a couple more questions, Nancy, would you say that, do you ever remember Jayme walking from Kay's, and you said it's about a 10 to 15-minute walk, is that right?
About 10 minutes, yeah.
10 minutes, okay, so not far. So less than a mile, probably about maybe a quarter of a mile, or not a quarter of a mile.
Maybe a quarter mile. Maybe a quarter mile, yeah.
Okay, not far at all. Would you say that this is the first time you knew of Jayme walking from Kay's to your house, or had she done that regularly?
No, that's the first time I knew she walked, because Kay had a vehicle, and Evidently, Kay had traded the vehicle for drugs that night, so the drug dealer was driving her vehicle. And that's why Jayme walked that day.
Okay, so maybe normally, if Kay hadn't have done that, she and Jayme would have gotten in the vehicle and then come over to your house in a car instead of Jayme walking by herself. Is there any reason that Kay didn't walk with her?
They had done drugs the night before, and Kay was still sleeping. And Jayme woke her up, told her, I'm going to Mom's to get some cigarettes and money, and I'm taking your phone. And Kay told her, said, well, don't be gone all day, because Kay's boyfriend was in a rehab, and he was expected to call her.
Okay.
So, you know, she was rushing Jayme up a little bit.
Right.
And I paid the phone bill for Kay's phone for a couple months. And, you know, finally the detective told me to stop wasting my money.
Right. So did you get any calls on the phone? Did anybody call? That any suspicious things happen while you were paying that bill? To your knowledge?
No. Nope. It always went straight to voicemail. And, you know, we didn't know how to get the messages out of it, but
all right.
We called it every day and left messages for her, you know, hoping that maybe by chance if the phone still existed that she could get it, you know, and say something, but...
So allow me to just go through this again. She leaves Kay's house at about 10:45 a.m. Okay, and that, you know, that's what Kay has told you. It's what Kay has told the police. And so it should have been about a 15-minute, let's say at most 15-minute walk. So she should have been there by 11. Of course, she didn't get there. And Kay, though, is calling you around that time.
Yes.
All right, seeing where Jayme is. Okay. Now, you had told me something in one of our prior conversations that Jayme had a fear of actually walking on the street. Why don't you tell the listeners about that?
She has always been that way. And, you know, I don't know why. Nothing had ever happened to her or anything at that time, but she just did not like to walk. I mean, she would walk with somebody. She didn't like to walk alone. Let me rephrase that.
Mm-hmm.
And,
okay.
you know, she would walk forever if somebody was with her, but if she had to walk, she always wanted the phone with her. And, I mean, it would be nothing. It's like, I'm at the corner, you know, 2 blocks away. Watch out the door for me until I get there. Never mind, just stay on the phone. And she would talk to you coming up the street. She was just that way.
And did you tell me that? And did you tell me though that she actually at some point stated that she had a fear of being snatched off the street?
Yes.
Wow.
And I don't know why. I don't know whether it was the movie she had watched, because she watched all those, you know, human trafficking movies and things like that on TV. And my husband always, he preached to Jayme and her brother both. You know, your blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids, your kids next door. You know, you're generic. You're in high demand through this stuff. And, you know, none of us really knew what human trafficking was. And, you know, you just know that anybody can be grabbed, your kids. But Jayme's a 22-year-old adult.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that?
Yes.
But, you know, he always taught him to be cautious and stuff, but
okay.
That was his kids.
Yeah. So she did Kay call you from like a house phone? Being that Jayme took her phone, how did she call you? Kay call you?
From her house phone.
She had a house phone too.
House phone. Yeah.
Okay. So you jump in the car, you go over to get Kay, and you drive around. Of course, you don't see anything suspicious or anything. Nothing.
Nope, nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
And everybody we seen's like, hey, did you see a little girl in red jogging pants and a pink hoodie walking this way? And did you see Jayme? And, you know, we just terrorized the whole neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
That was on a Thursday. Friday morning, I made the police report. And Saturday morning, a lot of people gathered, and they just split up and went up and down the streets, checked abandoned houses, looked in parked cars and things like that. I mean, we had a lot of people that went on a search looking for her.
Mm.
And came up with nothing, asked people along the way, and I don't know, it's just one nightmare I would never wish on anybody.
Yeah. Now, you did say, though, that when was it discovered that Kay's next-door neighbor, I think it is, said he actually saw Jayme go past his house that morning. Is that true?
That's what a lady that helped do the search, which has become a very good friend, was told that day.
Okay.
Janet. And
right. Okay, we're going to talk to Janet here in a moment. We're going to talk about that, but I just wanted to hear from you when you found out about that.
It would have been the Saturday right after she had disappeared when everybody was doing the search and stuff.
Okay, and he said that she was by herself?
I believe she was by herself and said he noticed because she was a pretty little girl.
Okay.
I believe that was his words.
And we should also state that Kay's house and this man's house, they're almost right at the intersection of Parsons and Stewart, very close to that intersection?
About a half a block down, yes.
Oh, so very, 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 very close.
Yes.
Okay. And so the police, you filled out the report, they searched around, you searched around, not much, nothing, in fact, was found. In fact, the only person you could find, at least for now, we'll talk to Janet here in a second, but originally this guy, the next door neighbor, is a very credible sighting of Jayme.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he did.
Okay. All right. Nancy, you can take, I guess, a little break for now. I'm going to talk to Janet for a little bit now. Janet Common, who is now a family friend of Nancy and Kay and the rest of the Bowens. Janet, first of all, how did you get all involved in this?
I actually seen Jayme's picture going down timeline that she was missing, and my first thought was that she looked very, very familiar, and I thought she looked my daughter's age, and my daughter was in high school, and I yelled for her to come up and ask her if she knew her, and she said, no, I've never seen her, and it was driving me crazy because she just looked so familiar. And so gotten hold of Judy Shamblin, which is Jayme's aunt, and we ended up talking. In fact, till about 5 in the morning. There was a little bit on the news about it, and we cried together, and I told her how bad I felt, and I would be there to help the family in any way I could. And she just, was saying that you see this on TV, but you don't think about it happening in your family. And then, of course, the search, we was planning that search thing for that weekend and handing out flyers, and I went down there for that. Put out flyers everywhere. I had walked by Kay's neighbor's house and went up there even to give a flyer, and the man answered the door, and I handed him the flyer and was talking to him, and he said, yeah, I seen her that morning. He said, I just happened to be up walking by the window when she was walking by, and I thought, oh, what a pretty little girl. He said, but I turned around, walked away, and didn't notice anything after that. I couldn't have told you where she went from there or whatever. And I
Let
knew
me
in
ask
my
you
heart.
this. Let me ask you this, Janet. Do you remember the first time you and Nancy met?
Yes, I do.
And where was it?
It wasn't.
Where did it happen?
It was at Nancy's house. I was going over there with Eric. We were going to be doing some searching and going through abandoned houses and stuff. And I remember telling Eric, I hope Nancy don't think I'm crazy because I got to give this woman a hug and let her know I'm going to be there for her and do everything I can to help. And he said, no, you'll love Nancy. She's a sweetheart. And Nancy had come walking down to the fence, and I just said, I'm Janet. Can I please give you a hug? and I hugged her, and I told her that, I said, we're going to find Jayme. And she said how much she really appreciated that. And just kind of kept getting closer and closer to the whole family ever since, you know.
Yeah, and it's been over 4 years now that you've known each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Went over there, would have coffee with her and, you know, talk to her and get more flyers and just, you know, go through abandoned houses and looking for her and whatever we could, all the, you know, vigils that we've done for, you know, trying to be there for them.
And you've been involved ever since. In fact, we're going to talk about a few of the things that you've done. But so this just motivated you because you also live in the area?
I live about a half hour away.
Oh, okay.
But I know the area.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but something spoke to you about regarding this particular disappearance. I mean, had you taken an interest in disappearances in the past, maybe follow things online? How would you describe that?
Kind of follow things online, not like to the extent I do now, but it was just, I think, the way when I had called Judy that night, and you know, we stayed on the phone, like I said, till after 4 in the morning, and her crying, not knowing what had happened to her, and just then after, you know, meeting Nancy, and just that poor thing was shaking so hard, and just tears in her eyes and wanting her baby back, and it broke my heart. I couldn't take it, and I figured there's no way I'm not backing out of this. I'm going to do everything I can to help them bring, you know, Jayme home, find her.
Okay. Wow. All right. The listeners should know that, as all the listeners know, I don't usually interview two people at one time for an episode, and it's very unique. But one of the main reasons that I'm doing this is because of the story that we're going to be talking about right now that I think is a key piece of information regarding Jayme's disappearance. And being that you experienced it yourself, Janet, and of course it wasn't Nancy who had experienced this, but you did. That's one of the reasons you're on here, among other things that you've done, of course, but this is a big deal. Talk to me, tell the listeners about the encounter that you had with this man on the street after Jayme disappeared.
Okay, we were finishing up that day.
Let's put it. How long is this after Jayme disappeared?
Oh, just like a couple days.
Okay. All right.
And we were like, everybody had gone like different directions, you know, to pass out flyers and ask questions and hang flyers and all that. And after a couple hours, we was all meeting back to head home. And I was getting ready to get in the car, and I seen a guy crossing the street. And I thought, hey, you know, why not? And well, what's one more? So
we're going to have to be a little bit more specific. Where did this happen? What intersection? How far from Kay's house, etc.?
He was crossing Parsons going toward Kay's, and like so he had gotten to that side of Parsons on the same side that Kay lived on when I approached him.
Okay.
And I went up and showed him the picture. He got teary-eyed. And he said, she's missing? And I said, yes. Have you seen her? And he just said, oh, my God. And I said, what? And he said, I witnessed it happening. And I said, you seen it happen? What did you see happen? And he said, I seen her get grabbed by two guys and thrown in a car. And he said it was a little red car. There were two guys in it. They looked like Mexican or something. And he said Jayme had fought and got out of the car, and the driver was screaming and cussing, and the other guy got back out, grabbed Jayme, got her back in the car, like pushed her in the back seat, took his fist and like went down and hit her, and the guy sped off. And I said, oh my God, did you call the police? And he said, no, I'm so sorry. He said, honestly, I thought it was a boyfriend-girlfriend dispute. And I said, and you're sure it was Jayme? And he said, yes, I'm almost positive that was Jayme, and I did see it. And I said, please, if you can remember anything or you see this car, call the police. I'm begging you. And I gave him the flyer.
Mm-hmm.
And my first impression, to be honest, was I mean, because even if I seen something like that and I thought it was a boyfriend-girlfriend dispute, I'm going to get a license plate number and call the police for the help.
Yeah.
My first impression was that he was a drug dealer or something, and he was scared he would be in trouble for something, and that's why he didn't do it. Because he did seem genuinely upset, like, oh my God, I can't believe she, is gone. That was her.
Yeah. Okay. And you came away from this, he didn't call the police, like you said, maybe because he was a drug dealer. Maybe he had other problems. Maybe he has a warrant out for his arrest that have nothing to do with drugs. We just don't know.
Right. Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem, though, that since that day, you've been on Parsons and Stewart, putting up flyers and everything. You've never seen this guy again, have you?
No. And I do look for him when I am down that way.
Okay. And I'm guessing that you've probably given a description of this guy to Nancy, who, of course, like you said, you live a half hour away, but Nancy just lives right down the street. I'm guessing Nancy could not, when you described this guy to Nancy, of course she's in this interview, that she could not identify who this guy might be either, or what?
No, I mean, and I even told Judy. I told everybody. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
always letting everybody know.
Yeah.
And Judy and I know one day drove around just looking for him specifically up and down Parsons, and
okay.
I just didn't see him.
All right. Did you ever stop anybody else on Parsons? Because people should know Parsons is like the main street and Stewart is like the cross street. Parsons is the street that all the businesses are on. Stewart kind of goes away from Parsons, and that's where people's houses are. So the main street of Parsons. Did you ever ask any of those people, hey, I saw this guy, this is what he looks like, do you know who he might be?
No, I didn't.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Do you think that if, just once again, a suggestion or something, do you think that you remember what he looks like? If there was a sketch artist, do you think you could sketch this guy out?
I think if I seen him, I would know for a fact it was him.
Okay.
If I was standing in front of him, I would remember him, yes.
Okay, great. And and of course, Nancy is on, once again, remind everybody, Nancy is on this call. Have either of you, and I'll just specifically ask Janet, since then, have you ever heard any other stories of somebody seeing something like that on Parsons that day?
You mean this guy, or?
No, I'm saying, has anybody else ever come forward to the police maybe to say, you know what, I saw this red car come up and snatch this girl? Anybody else? Have you ever heard that story from anybody else?
No. If they told somebody, I was never told. If they told to the police, I don't know.
All right. And this guy could not describe, he didn't get the license plate number. He said it was a red car, but didn't say what kind of car it was or anything.
Just like a little red car is what he said.
Okay. All right.
And
so
I did talk to the detective about it.
Okay. And do you think that, what was the detective's impression of this? Did he seem doubtful? Just your opinion? Of course, we don't know.
No, he actually wanted both of my phone numbers, my home phone, my cell phone, my address. Excuse me, wanted to know if he could come out and talk to me more about it. And I said, anytime. And I gave him all my information, and he never came out. I never heard from him.
Okay. All right. You've done some other things that probably I would suggest that people not do if they're getting interested in helping a family. But you and as Judy, who you mentioned earlier, you've actually followed a couple people, haven't you? We're not going to say who they were, but you've actually done some late night private investigation work on your own.
Yeah.
You too.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Once again, for the listeners, I would not suggest that, but Janet, it's your life. I guess you can do what you want. I'm sure that Nancy thanks you for that. Being suspicious of some things and kind of just checking things out. Okay, Janet, thank you for that. I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Let's go back to Nancy. We've already talked about the phone. Nancy, you told me that no video cameras were ever checked by the police?
No, they weren't.
Okay. And do you know if they ever tried to ping the phone, or where it might have been last, anything like that?
At one point in time, the detective told me that the FBI had received a couple pings off the phone, and they were watching it. And I asked him where, local, what, anything. He said, well, the technology's over my head. I'll have to have my specialist talk to them. End of story.
And you never heard anything back from that?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. Now, it may be difficult for them because it is in a, when you're walking, of course, your cell phone's going to be on one tower for quite a long time, in contrast in your car where you're moving at 60 miles an hour and it's bouncing from tower to tower. That may be, a complication of all this, and especially considering that it sounds that the phone was shut off not long after Jayme left the house. So it could also be, difficulty with that. Just don't know. The Gone series and Chillicothe. We had mentioned this early in the conversation, and I just want to reiterate this for the listeners. I want to ask this of Nancy again. Do you believe Jayme's disappearance has anything to do with the women in Chillicothe?
No, I don't.
Okay. Tell listeners why.
She never got out of sight. She didn't know any of the girls, and the only connection that I can come up with is at one point in time they were all in that rehab. So, I don't know if anybody has investigated the rehab. Like I said, 4 years later, I know nothing except my kid's gone.
Yeah.
All the investigations are secrets and tight-lipped, and then you find out 6-8 months later that some important information you had gave them had never even been checked out, and you get really upset and actually angry.
Yeah. I want the listeners to know that I do not believe, even though, and I think it was great that Jayme got some attention during that Gone series that was on Spike TV. I agree with you, Nancy, that I don't believe that her disappearance has anything to do with what happened down in Chillicothe with those women either. All right, I'm on your side. I've come to that conclusion independently, and my listeners know that I have no problem disagreeing with my guests once in a while. And if I thought differently, I want you to know, Nancy, I would tell you, and I would give you my reasons. But I'm telling you wholeheartedly, 100%, I agree with you. I think that there was something else going on. But just to be sure, did Jayme, being that she was living with you, ever mention any of the bad guys shown on that series? Dollar Bill, Crail, Preston, any of those men, did she ever even mention their names that you would remember?
No, she hasn't, but Dollar Bill does have a name here on the streets in the south side of Columbus. I have seen him, but to speak to him and talk to him, no, there's a distance there.
Okay.
And I have never heard Jayme mention him.
You'd never heard?
But,
okay, and if
I had no idea what his name was or anything till the story came out.
Okay, and being that we, you admitted earlier, and once again, we're not here to judge people. I've covered disappearances with drug dealers and women who are in prostitution. I don't care about any of these things. There is no judgment on this program. Okay, there's no judgment. If you want to find your daughter, that's why I'm here. Okay, but we have to talk about these things honestly. And do you think that possibly, being that your other daughter Kay was into that, do you think that she might have known any of these guys who were obviously into trafficking drugs around Ohio? To your knowledge.
No, the only one that anybody, Kay, actually it was her boyfriend, is a guy that they interviewed in Marion prison by the name of Man or something like that.
Okay.
And that's the only one that they've even mentioned they knew. And at that, I think he said that Jayme was a little sweetheart or something like that in the interview. He recognized her.
Okay.
But, you know, that was just it.
Okay.
And like I said, my daughter's boyfriend, he was actually in prison when they interviewed that guy.
Okay, so he couldn't have had anything to do with Jayme's disappearance anyway because he wasn't around.
He's in prison. Yeah.
Okay. I think another key to all of this for the listeners is that even though Jayme was mentioned in episode number 4 of that Gone series, and there were 8 episodes, what I noticed is that these bad guys who were interviewed for that show, I don't think Dollar Bill was interviewed, but a lot of these other guys were, Jayme's name never came up. Whereas Tamika, Timberly, these other women who were murdered or disappeared, of course, their names kept coming up over and over and over independently. Jayme's name was never mentioned. I think that's another indication that Jayme is not involved with the Chillicothe cases. And I think the people who were the quote-unquote stars, the documentary filmmaker, the woman, the profiler, and the ex-FBI guy, I think they kind of came to the same conclusion as well, that Jayme is not involved with any of that. Janet, were you there when they filmed the series? Were you there? Did you go around with them? Were you there?
No.
Okay.
I did watch the series, and I did film it. I still got it on tape, so I watch it over and over.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I was not there.
Okay. And just if you can, just to be sure, do you agree with Nancy and I guess myself that Jayme's disappearance is independent from those other crimes?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that kind of for a while made me think maybe they were connected is because out of respect for the other mothers that I've talked to, they had said that their daughters hung out on Parsons from time to time, and that they may have known Jayme. And then just because of the all of them being in the same rehab, not at the same time, but being in the same rehab. But I don't know. I don't think that she's involved with them.
Okay. But none of course, these women in Chillicothe aren't with us anymore, but any of their families did they ever say, you know what, Jayme's name sounds familiar to me? Has that ever come up to your knowledge?
No.
Never. Oh,
they,
okay.
Want to support. We all talk to each other back and forth and things like that, but no, they have never mentioned Jayme's name.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Janet, we're going to move to the topic of Buckeye Lake. Maybe you can explain to the listeners a little bit about that, and then I want to get Nancy's insight into this as well. Where is Buckeye Lake, and why did that name come up?
Okay, Buckeye Lake's not too far, actually, from where I lived. I don't know directions like east, south, west, or north. I'm sorry.
Fine.
But it's I don't know, maybe a 20-minute drive here from me. For a couple different times I've done this in Jayme's group where I have asked, begged, if anybody knows anything, please contact me. I won't tell the police, I'll go out and look on my own. Have a heart, just please come forward and let me know something. And I had gotten a PM from somebody that I didn't know. And they said, I just recently had a loss, and I felt like you needed to know this. I know what happened to Jayme. And I said, what? And they said that when she was taken, she was killed pretty much right away, and that her body was dumped out at Buckeye Lake. And I said, from who you heard this from, are you sure? They're very reliable. And they said, yes, very reliable. Mm-hmm. No doubt in my mind, you'll find her at Buckeye Lake, and I just felt like I had to let you know. And so I didn't want to tell that to Nancy and hurt her. I want proof first, before I'm hurting Nancy anymore.
Yes.
So I got a hold of Judy immediately. And as soon as Judy, I told her the name, and she said, oh, my God, Janet, do you know who that is? And I said, no. And she said, it's the boy that just got killed recently, a couple weeks ago down in the courthouse. And then I realized that is who it was. And I, being a dumb blonde that I am, I said, how could he, PM me when he's dead? And she said, well, probably somebody, in his family took over his Facebook.
Could be.
And so, yes, when, at this time it was like below zero here. But yes, we planned on going out there and walking around Buckeye Lake. I've even had other friends of mine offer to go out with me too and look. I know Judy was going to go with me. I don't want to put Nancy through it if we don't have to. I just try to protect her.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I usually go to Judy with things, because I don't have the heart to say, "Hey, I just heard your daughter's dead." What if
And
it's
let's
not true?
remind the listeners who Judy is again.
Jayme's aunt.
Okay, Nancy, that's your sister.
My husband's sister.
Hunter's sister. Okay, thank you, Nancy. Okay, so Judy is Nancy's husband's sister. That's who you go to for these things, and so this was an account. Maybe we should go over this a little bit again. There was a 16-year-old who was in court in Columbus. Something happens. He gets out of line, and one of the deputies who's there in the courthouse, in the courtroom, shoots him and kills him.
Yes.
All right, and this is where this message to you about Buckeye Lake was coming from, but it was already after this young man had been shot and killed.
Mm-hmm. And the person that told me even said, I recently had a loss of a child, and I know what it's like, and I feel I have to come forward now.
Okay. All right, so they sent you that message. Were you able to correspond with this person, or did the account go dead? What happened?
No, the account is not dead.
But has the person ever responded to you? Have you ever been able to have a back-and-forth conversation with this person, I should say?
Just that one time, and I did go down all the way through. There's so many people in Jayme's group, but I went down until I found it, because I do plan on contacting him again, or her, whoever is running it, and asking if they could give me more of a specific location at Buckeye Lake, because Buckeye Lake's a pretty good-sized place.
Okay. Let's move over to Nancy. Were you familiar with this case of this 16-year-old being shot when it happened, Nancy?
Yes.
You were. And what year did that happen? Do you remember?
Late 17, maybe early. I'd say around December of 17.
December of 2017, so just like 5 months ago.
Yeah, it hasn't been very long ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, I don't think I was aware it was that close to the present. Okay, interesting. Were you familiar with this young man? Because we should be clear, this kid lived in your neighborhood. It wasn't just Columbus. I mean, Columbus is a big city. It's where Ohio State is. This kid and his family lived near you.
Yes, they did. Actually, 3 doors down, there's an apartment building, and they had lived there a few years back, when he was smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, they would have known Jayme.
And if Jayme was walking, or she did, she left Kay's, was walking to your house, would she have passed this apartment complex where this young man, who had only been maybe 13 at the time, was living?
Yes, she could have. Because, like I said, it's right on the corner of my house. I'm like the third house west of that corner. And everybody else has like single homes and stuff like that. And they have an oddball apartment building there.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
She would have come to it.
Okay, so this is certainly a coincidence that this kid who was living with maybe his parents or his mother, whoever, down at the corner, he is living there at the time that Jayme disappeared. She would have had to have passed that apartment complex on the way to your house. And then a few years later, he gets in trouble for something. he's in court. He gets shot, which sounds like an unjustified shooting to me. I'm sure that's something that's still being investigated. But then, not long after that, Janet is saying that his account sent something to Jayme's Facebook page saying that they might know something about Jayme's disappearance.
Exactly.
That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy.
Who is using it? It is crazy. But, you know, we get a lot of crazy situations involving Jayme.
Yeah.
We had one incident in Flint, Michigan. My brother-in-law drove for a courier service, and a friend also drove. You know, they had separate vehicles, but the friend was in Flint, Michigan one day, and they have like life-size pictures of, or posters, should I say, of Jayme missing with all the information. We're talking like 6, 8 foot tall posters. And this guy came up and pecked on his van and said, "Hey, I know where that girl's at. She's at so-and-so street, so-and-so's got her, and here's the phone number." And they both went to the police and gave all the information to the police in Flint, Michigan. And they ran that information, the missing persons, Jayme, on there at noon that day. So that just kind of didn't help at all.
Yeah, you get a lot of scammers out there, liars, psychics, you know, trying to help you. And we don't talk about psychics on Unfound. I don't believe in them, so I'm not going to give them any time on this program. That can lead you in all sorts of different directions.
Oh, yeah, some very cruel things they see.
Nancy, what we're going to move to next, I know that your daughter, Kay, has received a lot of criticism over the last 4 years. Okay, she has. And I want to give you an opportunity to, I guess, defend her. And I have to admit, I've been one of those people that has been a little suspicious. I'll admit it. But she, at some point, you know, got fed up with things that were being said about her. She actually went down to the police, didn't she?
And took a lie detector test. They told her she passed it with flying colors. There is not a deceiving bone in her body.
Okay.
I mean, she even felt that we were blaming her for Jayme's disappearance, and I don't, and I never have. And, you know, Jayme would protect, or Kay would protect Jayme with her life. I already know that. My kids are close. They're all close like that. But I never doubted Kay. And everybody's like, "Oh, she could, you know, you can fix the lie detector test, you can beat it." The only thing that I actually questioned Kay a couple times over was the time Jayme left. And she still says it was 10:45 that morning.
Yeah.
And, you know, it almost makes sense because that's about the time she started calling, about 15 minutes after Jayme supposedly left her house and stuff. But people have said Jayme sold her, or Kay sold Jayme. Jayme was traded for drugs. Jayme was traded for a drug debt. Jayme OD'd and had to be disposed of. I mean, there's nothing that they have not said about Kay.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I know, I've read it.
She's devastated.
I've seen
That's her little sister. Yeah.
I've seen it. Okay. You couldn't have been happy, though, that she, you know, here Jayme is trying to get clean, and she and Kay are getting back into drugs. That had to be disappointing because you didn't find out about that until after. That had to be disappointing. Very sad.
Very disappointing. Very disappointing.
All right. And you've already said that Kay had traded her vehicle, this other guy that we're going to get to in a minute, although we're not going to mention his full name. She had traded the car for drugs, and this guy was driving around in her car, or her truck, that night into the next morning when Jayme disappeared.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, we're move on to something, and this case just gets a little strange at this point. There's a lot of the things that we've talked about, sightings and drugs and people walking places and disappearing, are all common elements of a lot of disappearances that Unfound covers. But this is something new. Janet, I'm going to start with you first. We're going to talk about Robert Cincinnati, and I can use his name because he's mentioned in the Gone series. In fact, they interviewed him. When did you personally, Janet, first hear about him?
Actually, it was from Judy, and it was pretty much within the first couple of days of Jayme's disappearance that she was worried about him, had concerns about him.
And why was that, do you think?
Just because he really liked Jayme. That Jayme had been known to go over there, and he was working the route that morning.
Well, working a route, what does that mean? He was actually Nancy's mailman.
Right, and he would have been coming down the street about that time that Jayme disappeared, working coming down Stewart, delivering mail around the time Jayme disappeared.
Have you ever had a chance to personally talk to him yourself, Janet?
No.
No. But have you ever been in his presence at all since this started?
No.
No. Okay. And what did he say during the Gone episode?
He said how Jayme would come over and he'd give her $50 and he did say that he loved her. That kind of gave me chills, I guess they had asked him what do you think happened to Jayme? And he said, I think somebody that couldn't have her and loved her took her. And they said, did you love her? And he stopped for a second and he said, yes, I did. That made me feel a little bit, I don't know, freaky.
Yeah.
And then there was another girl that had disappeared a year right before Jayme, and he had worked her mail route. He was her mailman. And she came up missing. And so, I don't know, you get so many different things going through your head trying to figure it out, you could go crazy.
Okay.
But
right.
He gives me the creeps. I think he's a pervert and a pedophile and a weirdo. And plus, he did come up missing right after Jayme did. He was gone for 6 months.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. All right. Thank you for that, Janet. Now, Nancy, when did you, even before Jayme's disappearance, how long had Robert Cincinnati, and once again, if people watch the Gone series, you're going to see him interviewed extensively. How long had he been your mailman before Jayme disappeared? Would you guess?
Well, I'm going to say at least 3 years.
Okay.
Maybe longer, but at least 3 years, I would say.
Okay. What were your impressions of him outside of the fact that, when did you, let's put it this way, when did you find out that he and Jayme kind of knew each other more than just him delivering your mail and she just happens to live there? When did you find that out?
She asked me for a ride one night, and I took her over on the street, and I said, who lives here? And she's like, the mailman. And she ran up and got money out of his mailbox. I went crazy on her. And she said, hey, if he's stupid enough to give us money, we take it. And that's when she finally told me names of other girls in this area that was also getting money from him. And she went to rehab. I believe he bought her cigarettes and money and took it out to rehab to her. And he told her he was going to get her a new house and car. And, he just made all kinds of promises to her and stuff like that.
On a mailman's salary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said that you knew he was your mailman, and you had no idea that he and Jayme had this other thing going on, and we're going to get to that other thing in a moment, but you didn't know that she and he had some sort of friendship, quote unquote friendship outside of the mailman service.
No.
Okay, until that night.
That night when I took her and found out where I was taking her, and she got money out of his mailbox.
Okay. And how long would you say was that before Jayme disappeared?
Let's see, maybe a year.
So a full year before Jayme disappeared, she was getting money for Robert Cincinnati. Did she, just to ask you, and this is a PG program, but do you know why Jayme was getting that money, this $50?
I was actually told that Jayme, and including other girls, were invited over to watch pornographic movies while he took care of his own needs. They were just to sit there and watch, and they were paid for it.
Jayme didn't specifically tell you this. She didn't tell you that night when you found out about this? Somebody else told you that? Or
she did eventually.
Oh, she did eventually. Okay.
I didn't let up on it.
I'm sure you didn't.
No.
Okay.
And, you know, it was hard to deal with him knowing this when he came to bring my mail. So I guess you could say I did have an attitude with him.
I bet you did.
And when Jayme came up missing, I never actually thought twice about him. He never entered my mind until he started texting my cell phone. Because, you know, evidently Jayme had called him at one time or another from it. And he started texting it saying, she'll be home when she gets loose. I went here looking for her. She was seen there. I beat this guy up. I kicked these doors in. Well, this was on a Saturday he started doing that, Saturday after she disappeared. Well, by Sunday, he posted, I was too tired to go to work. I wore myself out looking for Jayme. He said, that's hard work beating people up and busting in doors, but she'll be back when she gets free. And, oh, he had me going bonkers, buddy. That's when it's like he is really putting himself out there like that. Yeah. Why? Nobody else is going to the extreme to help find Jayme. Why are you? And then he told my daughter, Kay, that if she wanted to stop by, that he would give her gas money so she could continue driving around looking for Jayme. And Kay didn't go that night, but I guess the next day he got a hold of her again, and she went over there, and she told him she needed to use his bathroom, and she went through his house and searched it and looked. She said she seen no sign that Jayme had been there or anything like, you know, anything out of place or anything.
Okay.
And that was the end of that one. But,
all right, just to be clear, though, was Robert Cincinnati, and yes, his last name is like the name of the city, was he Kay's mailman, too, at the time of Jayme's disappearance?
I do believe so.
Okay. All right, so we got this freaky mailman, and I would urge people to watch the interview that he does. I mean, you know, he didn't decline an interview for the Gone series. He sat there and did the interview, and he actually makes a claim in there, and I'd like to talk to you about this, Nancy. He claims that Jayme and Kay were over at his house the day before Jayme disappeared. However, Kay kind of disputes that. What do you think about that?
Well, I've asked her that question again recently, and she's like, absolutely not. She said that Jayme told her that Robert was mad at her because she was on drugs and told her he would not give her any more money until she got cleaned up. So, you know, Kay's saying that he wouldn't give Jayme money. So, you know, this is another part where I'm saying he just keeps putting himself out there to look bad.
Yeah.
And the night before when Jayme disappeared that Wednesday night, you know, like I said, it's bye, I love you and stuff like that. And then she called 10:30 and told me she was in for the night. Okay, and I left out the part where she called, we're at the gas station getting gas. Do you want me to bring you a cappuccino? And she was just the type that told everywhere she went and what she did. Jayme had no secrets.
Okay.
So if you want something told, you don't tell Jayme.
Okay. All right.
And that's why, another reason that I don't believe she was over there that night, I mean, I'm not disputing Kay, but she would have mentioned it had she went there.
All right. Okay. Let me see here. Okay. Where was, and Robert even owned up to this, where was Robert on the morning that Jayme disappeared?
Corner of Stewart and Parsons at 10:45.
He said that, didn't he? In that interview, he actually said that. He put him in the area where Jayme disappeared.
Yes, he did. And he said that that's why that the police officers had interviewed him and stuff, is because his route placed him at the exact same intersection at the exact same time.
Very, very strange.
Now, he said he never knew Jayme was missing until the following day. And that Saturday is when he started putting all the crazy text messages about looking for her and things.
Yeah. But we should state something, like Janet said, that shortly after Jayme disappeared, he kind of disappeared himself, but it seems when he came back from his disappearance, his own disappearance, he went right back to being a mailman. Is it your understanding that he may have gone into rehab for an alcohol addiction?
That's what I was told.
All right, so
6-month treatment.
Yeah, so it may be that Saturday, 2 days after Jayme disappeared, he's home on a Saturday, maybe getting drunk and just drunk texting. Because I don't believe he was going around Columbus knocking in doors or anything. I think we would have heard about that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Mailman confronts drug dealers regarding disappearance of young woman. Yeah, that would surely make it into the news, and it didn't. So I think that he was just drunk texting at that point, and it's unfortunate that he has an addiction, but we have to keep him in mind as a suspect. He's very strange.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have a missing persons banner on my front porch.
Mm-hmm.
And when he comes to deliver my mail, which I don't have him now, he delivered my mail up until a couple months ago, but he would come down the street, he would look at Jayme's missing banner, and he would talk to it. Then he would come up in the yard, leave my mail, and when he left and turned around to lock my gate back, he would say something else to her. And it literally drove me nuts.
And they actually caught that all on film on the Gone series, didn't they? When he just happened to be coming by while you were doing your interview. He was delivering mail.
Yes. And they actually run him down the street and ask him would he talk to them, and they're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
They go home and change clothes. So he goes home, takes his mail uniform off, and he comes back. And
it's like he loves the attention.
Yeah. It was.
Okay.
And, I mean, that's like Jayme's little boy. He would buy him Nerf guns, candy, money for the ice cream trucks, all kinds of stuff. He was always given to him. And, you know, that bothered me because was it guilt or trying, you know, he feels sorry for the kid or I don't know anymore. I just really don't know. But
he just could be a strange guy just injecting himself into the conversation. The issue, though, is that he and Jayme definitely did have some sort of relationship, not maybe a romantic or anything, relations like that, but they knew each other, and you know that because you drove her over to his house one time.
Yes.
I need to ask you this. After that was a full year before. Do you know how many times? Can you even begin to guess how many times that Jayme might have been over to his house before and after you took her over that one time?
No,
any ideas?
I don't, because she had went with other neighborhood girls, I guess, and you know, I mean, most of the time it was a few of them would go at a time. And the detective told me they found purses and stuff that had belonged to other girls that were actually in jail. When they, I guess they had got the girls' names out of their purses, and then they turned up in jail, and they went and interviewed them, and, he never gave me their names or anything, but I don't think it was anybody that was really close to Jayme. So, he's just like, he had a very major route down through here.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of girls, all of them 21, 22 years old, a lot of them on drugs, and, he just had the hot spot.
I guess.
He had it all.
And one more thing, though. After Jayme disappeared, how long after he actually gave you Jayme's ID, didn't he?
Yes. It was about a year ago he brought me the ID. He told me, he said that he had moved and he was going through some of these things and he found Jayme's ID. And he said, do you want it? And I said, well, yes, I want it. So he brought it to me the next, and I called the detective and he came and picked it up. And that ID had been missing because we had bought a new ID for Jayme to go to rehab because her ID was missing. So, he had held that ID for a while. He had it.
For like
now,
4 years.
How he got it, yeah. So how he got it, I don't know. I mean, did she leave it there? Did, drop it? Whatever. But that ID had been missing a while.
Do you remember at the time when Jayme first, when you say ID, is this a driver's license or is this something else? Did Jayme have a driver's license, maybe?
A temporary driver's license.
Temporary, okay. Do you remember the story that Jayme even gave you back when that particular ID was lost? How it might have been lost? Did she have any idea?
Of course not.
Okay.
She'd tell me, no, I don't know where it's at. You probably took it.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I'm guessing that it never occurred to her that Robert might have it because he still had it.
Didn't. No, she didn't think he had it.
So it could be that he might have stolen it from her one of those times that she was over there.
Yes.
I'm wondering.
I'm not saying she didn't drop it or he took it but I don't know. You look at it and you get crazy.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you can't just disappear off the face of this earth. And we've got girls doing that.
Men too. Men too, Nancy. Now, Robert Cincinnati isn't the only strange guy in this disappearance of your daughter, Jayme, Nancy. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit now, tell the listeners a little bit about Dave Stelzer, Stelzer, and we'll start with this. When did you first meet him?
He appeared at my door one evening about 2 weeks after Jayme disappeared. And he kind of, introduced himself as a private investigator and a human trafficking advocate. And my husband told him, like, just go on, I don't have money for a private investigator right this minute, because we were, like, really devastated. We still are, but
of course.
It was really fresh at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, no. He said, I help find missing people, he said, and, he works with the human trafficking groups and stuff like that. So, he came on in, we talked to him, stuff like that, and he's like that. He goes to the FBI in London, Ohio, their headquarters, and sits in on their meetings, and he gets the information about how many arrests were made for human trafficking and things like that, and where their next sweep's going to be, and he made it all big and everything. And then he called like a meeting at Plank's Beer Garden, which is a pretty famous historical restaurant around here. And we went there, and the detective actually turned up, and, you know, people talked about what they knew, what they, you know, heard and things like that, and what was going to be done. And, you know, the TV stations came out, so that was good for us. And then at another time, he brought all these letters and had people fold the letters and address the envelopes to the FBI agent and stuff like that and send them out. And, you know, just different things like that. And we had a one-year event at the park, and it was actually a very big thing we did. And a guy named Eric Bellamy had, you know, he planned it and stuff like that. And Dave Stelzer, at that point in time, had told us he was like a security guard. So he did the security guard work at the event. And later on, Eric said, "Where did you get him from?" I said, "He just appeared at my door." And he said, "Well, he was chief of police at Ohio State University, and they fired him for pornographic things on his website." And I said, "Oh, you're silly. Stop it."
Oh, my.
And he actually pulled the information up, and then, you know, I got to looking too, and it's saying that he was more or less fired because he had a pornographic website called Fantasy Warrior.
It's true.
And,
I've seen the stories. Yep, that's true.
well, I thought maybe by him having pornographic material on his computer, that because he said he was a human trafficking advocate, that, you know, maybe he was checking back pages and stuff looking for Jayme.
Yeah.
You know, this is all new to me.
Of course.
And I kind of took Dave's side. And, you know, I never ran him off or anything like that. I continued to let him come here and talk to me. And, you know, he hung around and stuff until about 2 years ago. We had a event where, well, you know, just like balloon release and stuff. It was really cold that April. But Dave was there, and we were standing at the corner of Stewart and Parsons, and this girl that knew Jayme, she was in rehab with Jayme, and they had gotten clean together, and then she said when she seen Jayme disappeared, she said she got clean. It changed her whole life. And, you know, so Dave, he's standing there talking to her, and he's trying to shake her hand and give her his business card and all kinds of stuff, and we looked over, and this man is drooling out of each side of his mouth. This girl...
He was hitting on her.
Yeah.
At this event that you're holding for Jayme, that's supposed to be a very solemn, you know, event, he's hitting on a girl that's there.
Yes, and she was scared. She had some friends, Janet may have even been one of them, that occupied him until she could leave. And she went straight around the corner, and she called the Detective Springer that was on the case.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've never heard from Dave again. So, I don't know. But that was just, it was so heartbreaking, so devastating. And he put a picture on Facebook of a girl that resembles Jayme a whole lot. And I don't know whether that was like to taunt us or what it was. And when I mentioned it to him a little bit later, he put one on with a view from a different side. And then it's like stop human trafficking and all that stuff. So, I mean, I don't know. He told me that he had taken those pictures about 10 years prior when he was into photography. So he said he just paid the girls a couple bucks to model for him.
Let's just clear this up. So at some point after Jayme disappeared, he had sent you a picture. That he didn't specifically say it was Jayme in the picture, but he sent you this picture, and you thought it was Jayme in the picture.
He put it on Facebook for everybody, and everybody's calling me.
Okay.
And, yeah, because, I mean, you know, it sat like Jayme sat. She always kept one of those scrungy hair bands on her arm. and she was getting ready to get her hair. Like I said, she had long blonde hair, but she was getting ready to get the curls put in it because my other sister-in-law is a beautician.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to have the curls and the dark hair, I'm sure it would have been a wig or something. But just the outline of the face and things like that looked like Jayme. It was just enough to unnerve you quite a bit. But
And by the time, the listeners should know, by the time you're listening to this interview on May 4th, I will have posted that picture online, and we will have some opinions on whether people think that's Jayme or not. Once again, though, Dave Stelzer says it's not, but you believe it is Jayme, though.
it really looks like her, it does.
Okay. And he claims that that was a picture that was taken like 10 years before she disappeared. Like way long time ago. Okay.
Yes.
All right, but once again, he claims that it is not Jayme in the picture, whereas you and Janet believe that there's a good possibility that it might be. And once again, here's a guy who is trying to help out, and you were thinking he's doing a good job, and it does sound like he did do some good things, but then you find out about this past of his with porn while working as an Ohio State police officer.
Yes.
Okay.
And, he would go to, like, the west side of Columbus and what they refer to as the Bottoms, which is a really bad area.
Mm.
And he told me, he said, he made him a T-shirt. He put a picture of Jayme on it, just an iron-on deal. And he was walking the streets over there, and he said, I was talking to this girl and that girl, and he was calling them by names. And I'm like, how do you know these girls? And he never answered me, but I thought, well, maybe, human trafficking, he's worked with them or something like that. But these were girls that were prostituting,
Yeah.
and he knew their names and things. And that just, really stunned me. And I don't know. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but he went right straight over there, put Jayme's picture on his shirt, walked up and down the street, come back, it's like, oh, I talked to this one and I talked to that one, and I'm like, my goodness.
Okay, and he's an older guy. Robert Cincinnati, I think, is in his 40s, but Dave Stelzer, he's well into his 50s, maybe his 60s.
Yes.
All right. And here he is hanging out, like you said, he was at that event trying to pick up this girl who was in her 20s.
Yeah, she knew Jayme from rehab and stuff, and, they had known each other prior, but he's trying to give her his business card to contact him and all this stuff, and, just kept grabbing a hold of her and things like that. And then we looked, and, he has got drool running out of each side of his mouth. That just totally, totally creeped me out. And,
yeah.
I'm glad he's never tried to contact me or talk to me again, because I wouldn't want to have to go through the effort to tell him what I really thought now.
When was the last time that you spoke to Dave Stelzer?
April 10th, about 2 years ago.
Okay, so an event for Jayme. And he hasn't tried to contact you. It was just like one day he's talking to you, the next he's not.
Right.
Okay.
He, yeah.
All right. And do you think, we've never been able to establish this, I tried to look into it at least a little bit, but do you think that Dave Stelzer and Robert Cincinnati know each other?
I do now, yes.
You think so now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, another strange guy, but we're not done talking about him. Janet, you have your own Dave Stelzer story. Why don't you tell that for the listeners?
Well, the really weird one was we was down there for one of Jayme's events, and my youngest daughter always wanted to go with me, and she was 12, I think, at the time, because it was a couple years ago. I had never mentioned anything about Dave. She had never looked at any pictures. She never knew anything was thought weird about the guy. We were walking And all of a sudden, I mean, she literally got behind me and grabbed a hold of my shirt and said, "Get me out of here," and her whole body was shaking. And I said, "What is the matter with you?" And she said, "Please, please, hide me. I want you to get me up there by Judy. Get me up by Judy." I said, "What is wrong?" And she said, "Just hide me. Get me up." Well, anyway, I got her up there by Judy and Nancy because they were talking together at that time. She said, when I got her up there, she turned around, she pointed to Dave, and she said, "He's been staring me down," and she said, "He's scaring me the way he's looking at me. I'm terrified." She was so scared when we went to leave there after the balloon release, and we went over to a different area to do a candlelight vigil. We went in the car. We didn't even walk, and then Judy put my daughter in her sister and brother-in-law's car. It was like a van, and she laid down in the van shaking. She was so scared. And we were standing there, and Judy said, "Janet, don't make it obvious, but kind of watch, look up at Dave. He's taking pictures of all the women here." And so I made it, I looked up, and yeah, he was. I said, "He don't freak me out none. What's he going to do with everybody around?" So I walked right over beside him. Eric was kind of standing over there too. And I just started talking to Eric kind of loud, just like trying to blow Dave off, like get him away from everybody. And then from what I know, remember, he turned around finally and walked away. But my daughter was terrified all the way home. He was following us and everything. She was scared to death of this guy.
Had you ever seen her act like that before or since?
No. Well, now she has flashbacks of things. She's had some other problems, and she does get scared at certain times and will even pass out. But no, that was the first time she's ever done that over somebody she never knew. And she had been down there for all of Jayme's events with me. She always wanted to go.
Okay. And you had also told me, Janet, that Dave Stelzer, at least in this time, until 2 years ago, and he hasn't any more contact, he used to disappear for some times in an RV.
Mhm. That's why I stay friends with him on Facebook. He's not friends with even Judy and Nancy, but he stayed friends with me. And every once in a while, he'll just say, "Do you know have you found out anything about Jayme?" And I just say no.
All right. And did you not tell me that there was some event, maybe it's the same event down at Parsons and Stewart, that he showed up with what you believe was a prostitute, or a young girl much, much, much younger than him, and he claimed that this picture that we've already talked about with this young woman sitting on this fire escape outside of a building, that he took this sex trafficking, raise awareness for sex trafficking. He tried to pass this young woman off as as the girl in the picture.
Yeah.
You were there to see that.
He had prostitutes on each arm. He was always hanging around Parsons, always.
Huh. Okay. I need to ask you this. Since Jayme disappeared, has anybody ever been able to establish where Dave Stelzer was on the morning that Jayme disappeared, to your knowledge?
No.
Nobody's ever questioned it.
No.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And you said, Nancy, that he got involved a couple weeks after Jayme disappeared?
Yeah, he just turned up at my door.
Okay. Do you remember if Jayme ever mentioned to you, maybe if even Kay or somebody else in your family's ever mentioned, did Jayme ever mention knowing a Dave Stelzer?
No. Nobody knew him.
Okay.
And, that's kind of what Eric, he's a super kid.
Let's talk, maybe we've mentioned his name a few times. Eric Bellamy is his name. Who is he exactly?
He got on Facebook December after Jayme disappeared, and we got like 6 inches of snow that day. And he had set up a big event for people to come and pass out flyers and stuff like that at a local shopping center. And we're like, who is this guy? So we went to see what was going on, and he had pulled up things from MySpace that Jayme had on there, and things that she had promised her kids. And we all had pictures, I mean, actual photographs with missing things on it. And that's where we met him. We all went out and hung posters that day in the snow, and, you know, he put her on TV and stuff again. And, you know, we thanked him, and he came to the house, and, you know, he was just on top of it. It's like, let's do this, this, and this. And he planned a big event at Shelter Park, and, you know, he's just an event organizer, and he's just a go-getter kid. And, well, I guess I should call him kid. He's probably in his 20s, but to me, he's a kid, and he was great. And he had the great big event at the park and stuff like that. And, you know, I still talk to him things, but one of his family members accused him of some stuff, and people kind of took their side. And, you know, I'm one, you got to really, really convince me, and I see nothing wrong with what had happened. So Eric is still friends with me. And as a matter of fact, I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. And he's always around, and he's a great person.
Okay.
But,
and he's been helpful. I mean, does he have like a regular job? He's not in law enforcement or anything? You don't have to say what he does, but he's not in law enforcement or anything.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
But he's been very helpful.
Yes, and he's the one that, he's got this other outlook to him or something. He wants to, and he's actually the one, we were all just sitting here drinking coffee one night, and he's like, and he started telling us about Dave Stelzer, and I'm like, I mean, you know, that was really a shock.
Any idea how Eric might have known that? I mean, he must know the news, or did he just remember, or why do you think he knew that?
Kind of Googled him. Googled his name, I think, and it popped up. Ohio police chief fired or something like that.
Okay.
He just, you know, just threw it in there, and it's like, wow.
Okay. So Eric is very much like Janet. He is a person who you didn't know before, but has come into your life and continues to help you. That's who Eric is.
Yes.
Okay. Good to have people like that. Excellent.
It sure is.
Okay. Let's, we're not going to mention his name because he's a dangerous guy, but Jayme had an ex-boyfriend from a few years before she disappeared. We have to at least examine this angle, being that ex-boyfriends, ex-husbands can play a role in the disappearance of women. Nancy, how much do you want to say about this guy, and what kind of relationship did he and Jayme have?
He met Jayme at Jayme's friend's house, and he's older, and he like, oh, I'll take you to Florida, I'll take you here, I got this, and you know, he just swarmed all over her, promising her money and trips and stuff, which he did. He took her to Florida a couple times, and then he got her down there and beat her, wouldn't let her eat, wouldn't let her have a cigarette, and he beat people up or threatened them till they wouldn't help her. And at that point in time, she wanted away from him when they came back to Columbus, and he continued to be mean to her and do things to her. She had to drink like health water, eat health food, and he didn't want her to smoke or anything like that. And Jayme's a very feisty little girl. So at that time, I guess he started giving her some pills to help calm her down. But, you know, he kept her away from the family and her little boy. And it's like he just took her. And, you know, she would try to call, and he would hang the phone up, and it got real bad. And my husband went out and threatened him one night. Well, the next day we wake up and the tires are smashed off my husband's truck. And we had that happen a couple times, and they cut the gas line, going to firebomb it, and he caught him. It's not the guy, but he pays people to do these things. And, you know, just a lot of crazy stuff like that. And finally, we got Jayme away from him. He beat her, tortured her, did all kinds of horrible things to her. And we got her back, and, you know, she was walking down the street. They had like a little fair or something, street fair. And she had her oldest son. He was in a baby buggy. He was a couple of years old, but, you know, she was pushing because it was hot and stuff. And this guy went by and threw a large cup of pop at Jayme and the baby stroller and covered them both.
Oh, my.
And Jayme said, you know what? She said, I'm not mad it got me, she said, but my baby did not deserve that. So later on, he calls her one morning and he's going crazy. He said somebody broke in his house, beat him up really bad and stuff. And he blamed Jayme. And, you know, this guy's like 6 foot something, health freak, muscle bound. And we never thought nothing about it. Well, like a week later, they come at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the police come and they arrest Jayme. And he had called her and told her, he said, look out front, said the police are going to arrest you and you're going to jail. And she's like, right. She come in the bedroom, woke me up, she said, Mom. That's when she was telling me what he had said and stuff. Well, sure enough, they arrested her. And that was like on a Tuesday night. And it went to court, and he asked him to drop charges against her. And they told him that he had to go over to the grand jury, and he tried that. And then he went to the jail, and he put money on her books. He bought her, you know, her underwear and stuff, and commissary money and everything. And finally, the detective, he reviewed the case and everything, and he dismissed it and let Jayme out of jail. And he wanted to talk to the boyfriend. Well, the boyfriend's impossible to find. He never rents a house under his name. He don't have vehicles in his name, utilities. It's like he don't exist. But he's a very mean person. And that's the only person in the world that I could think of that would want to do harm to Jayme. Because somewhere, I think he still blames her for him being beat up and robbed. And
okay.
I think he would have something done to her if he didn't do it himself.
And when do you think that Jayme might have seen him the last time?
Probably July of, oh my goodness,
2012?
somewhere along in there. No, it would have been before then.
2011.
Yeah.
All right, so quite a while, at least to your knowledge, that was the last time that Jayme would have run into this guy. And once again, we're not using his real name because he's still out there somewhere.
And I guess the comment was made, she deserves everything she gets. And then he called me the Christmas after Jayme disappeared to wish me a Merry Christmas.
And to your knowledge, have the police ever looked at this guy? Do we have any idea? I mean, how close did he live to that area of where Kay lived, of Parsons and Stewart? Where did this guy live in relation to those areas?
As far as I know, he's always lived towards the north end. But there is a car lot on the corner from my house that he's known to frequent. So, you know, had Jayme had been walking that day, and he could have been at that car lot and seen her. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, many things could have happened, and we all know something did.
Yeah.
But you just go crazy.
Right. All right. So there's somebody who had a grudge against Jayme.
That's the only person in the world I could think of that would ever want to hurt her or do anything to her.
Okay. All right, and once again, the listener should know that I know what his name is, but Nancy does not want his name given out for fear of, just fear of him. Okay, so
yes,
we'll just have to leave it at that. Okay, and I will respect her wishes. Here's another guy we're going to talk about. Early in the conversation, we talked about how Kay had given her truck away and for drugs. And once again, this is a guy we're just going to use His first name, his name is Trey. When did you know about this guy? Did you know that he was did Jayme know him? Of course, Kay knew him. What do you feel comfortable saying about this guy?
Jayme had grown up with him. They went to school together and everything. And, you know, they were friends. You know, not the kinds you hang out with, but, you know, hey, how are you, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Stop and talk. But Kay had traded her truck off that night for drugs. And actually, the last phone call that came in off the phone records that we did manage to get was his phone. And I'm not sure without looking whether it was the last ingoing or outgoing call. I don't know which was, but it belonged to Trey. And he had picked Jayme and Kay up and took them with him, and then brought them back, gave them the drugs, and dropped them off at Kay's house. Well, at that time, that's when Jayme called and it's like, hey, we're in for the night.
Uh-huh.
So when I found out Jayme was missing, I told Kay, I said, are you coming here or what? She said, no. Said, Trey still got my truck. And I looked out the door, which this same apartment building, that's where he stayed at the time, and her truck was parked there. So when I got Kay, we went over there and talked to him, and no, he hadn't heard nothing. He didn't know anything, and he started calling other people asking if she had been by there or came and tried to buy anything and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my problems with drug dealers, but for once, they were all out on a manhunt for Jayme. Everyone she knew and everybody that knew one, they were looking right along with the rest of us.
So are you saying, so where Trey lived, where he had Kay's truck, would Jayme have walked past this apartment and walked by Kay's truck on the way to your house?
Yes, she could have.
That's quite a coincidence.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so he had Kay's truck at the time of Jayme's disappearance, and like you said, he lived. Is this the same apartment complex where this young kid, the 16-year-old that eventually was shot, is that the same apartment complex, or is it something different?
No, it's the same one. And anybody you want to know about or look into or has been in trouble has probably lived in it. It's just a oddball on a residential single-family street, you know, single-family homes, and we have these two apartment buildings in the middle of it.
Okay, let me put this together for the listeners then, just so I make sure I understand this. You have this young man, and I wish I would have written down his name, but I'm sure the listeners will look it up. It's an easy story to find about a 16-year-old who was shot and killed in a courtroom in Columbus, Ohio. He and his family live in this apartment complex. It just happens to be the same apartment complex where Trey lives, who was a drug dealer for Kay. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, of course, Jayme disappears. At the time, Trey has Kay's vehicle, and Jayme would have had to have passed this apartment complex to get to your house on that morning. Then, sometime in 2017, this young man, he's in court. He got in trouble. He's in court. Something happens. Deputy in the court shoots him and murders him, or I don't know if it's a justified shooting. I think that's something that's still being adjudicated. Then, not long after that, Janet gets a message on Jayme's page. The page, Janet, if you could get in here for a moment, on Jayme's page on Facebook.
No, he actually had come to my page and PM me.
Your personal page.
Right.
So somehow he figured out who you were. You didn't know him before.
I wrote out the post. I had wrote out the post begging for anybody with any information.
All right. Well,
so please come forward.
All right. So somehow though, you didn't know any of these people beforehand, though.
No, I did not.
You didn't know this this young man. You didn't know this 16-year-old. You didn't know his mother. You didn't know anybody else in his family. But somehow they found you.
Yeah, from what I wrote, he was there in Jayme's group.
Okay. But he contacted you, private message, and says, I know something about Jayme's disappearance.
Yes, and I feel guilty, and I think I've recently lost a loved one myself, and I feel like I need to tell you what happened to Jayme.
Wow, I'm just going to ask you both. Do you think that maybe that message was not a crank email message, but it was something true and something did happen in that apartment complex?
I think it's a possibility.
What do you think?
He didn't live there at that time, but being that kid's age, and, you know, he probably knows a lot of little things that go on that we would overlook.
Mm-hmm.
But we all know it wasn't him that sent the message.
Right.
Right.
So,
But it could have been his mother, could have been somebody else.
that's what I'm wondering.
Right. I didn't realize, even the listeners should know, I didn't know this was the same apartment complex that this family, this young kid, and whoever else lived in was the same apartment complex that Trey lived in. I didn't know that until this interview.
Yeah, well, the young boy, I believe his name's Joey, he wasn't living there when Jayme disappeared. He had lived there prior to that.
Okay.
But, I mean, this is like, I've been here for 40 years in the same house. I've raised 2 sets of kids and grandkids. And, you know, everybody knows my kids. That's the way most of the families are down here. They've been here forever, and everybody knows each generation of their kids. So everybody knew Jayme, and gossip, there is no gossip. There's nothing. And that just amazes me.
Everybody knew Jayme in that neighborhood, but nobody saw anything.
Nobody saw anything. Nobody's heard anything. No gossip, no nothing. Every now and then you'll get a crazy one. The first one started, the MS-13s took her.
Yeah.
They took her to Mexico. Okay, that's not where MS-13s originate from. And then it's the bikers had her. And the Detroit boys took her. And, you know, just any gang that they could blame it on got the blame for it. Jayme didn't know them people. You know, the closest she would have came was maybe no Detroit boys, but I had to look up what an MS-13 was. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, not everybody's going to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, now we do, but.
Yeah. Janet, I want to ask you, just to finish this Trey section of this, interview, you've seen a picture of Trey. Do you believe he is the guy that you encountered on the street that day, 2 days after Jayme disappeared?
I think there's a very good chance it could be. I would love to see him in person, and I would know for a fact.
Okay. Thank you. All right, because we can't forget about that. The encounter that you had 2 days after, and you just haven't seen that guy since. Well, maybe it was Trey. We just don't know. But
From what I've heard, this guy's in jail. I'm sorry.
And maybe if you could encounter Trey at some time, if it's not him, maybe he might know, being that he was doing business in the area. He might know who that guy was. Just a thought to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. One more guy we do have to talk about one more guy regarding Jayme's disappearance, and this guy's name is Kyle Bickle. Nancy, tell the listeners about Kyle Bickle.
I saw a page on Facebook where he had went to like Circleville or somewhere at a bank, and all the employees were holding up signs and stuff with Jayme missing and representing human trafficking and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, who is this guy? Never seen him before, heard from him or anything. Well, then he turns up here, and Kyle and Eric became friends at one point in time, and he was always like, I don't know, I wasn't sure if he was a security guard, a cop. I wasn't sure what he ever was, but Eric and Kyle went to Chillicothe right after the girl Tiffany Sarah was found, and they questioned her niece, I guess. And Kyle stated that he was like a FBI agent or something like that, and Eric was a news reporter, and they almost got in all kinds of trouble over that. There was a lot of problems, and then all of a sudden, he turned up a couple times and stuff like that, and then he supposedly told somebody that he had told me where Jayme was, and if I wasn't going to go get her, then he wasn't going to say or do nothing else to help me, to heck with us. He had never mentioned finding Jayme to me, or especially knowing where she was, because you done heard, if we find anything out, we go looking. And so I don't know where this guy came from, but like any traffic accident, he's there. We had some police officers that were murdered a while back, and he turned up there, and I don't know if he's saying he was a Westerville police officer also or what, because he always seems to have a uniform of some type on.
He's like playing cop, which is hugely illegal.
Okay, and that comes back to something else, too. He plays cop. Dave Stelzer looks cop. Could they have stopped Jayme and got her that day? Or believing they were police officers? I thought I said, my mind just jumps.
Yeah, it goes all over the place.
It does. But, I mean, and at that point in time, they did arrest a guy, younger guy, blonde-headed, in this area for portraying a police officer. And they got another guy south of here for doing the same thing. But I asked the detective, I said, why don't you go talk to that guy? Maybe he knows something. And I don't know nothing. I don't know whether it's just he felt it's none of my business or whether he didn't do nothing. I don't even know what to think anymore. But 4 years later is way too long not to have a tip of any type or any information.
I agree.
So I have now been given a new detective. She called me probably about 3 weeks ago, told me she was going to be my new detective, and that's all I know. I just,
yes. Okay.
I get so frustrated and upset, but I'm not going to give up because I still feel Jayme's out there.
Let's move to the conclusion of this interview. Janet, what's this been like for you? You got involved right after Jayme disappeared. You never knew Jayme, but here you are 4 years later, still working very hard to find her, working with Nancy. What's this been like for you?
Very, very sad. I pray daily that Jayme is found, and I'll never leave the family side. I'll always be there for them to help and do anything in my power to help get her home. I've gotten so close to them. I really do think of them. I call them my family, even to other people. I love them that much. I mean, I've just gotten really close to them. And then this is a whole different thing that we won't go into, but I had a thing where my own daughter had disappeared for 2 days, and it made me realize, thank God we got her back, but it hits that much harder. Like, oh my God, poor Nancy. What is she going through? Because throughout the 4 years when I've gone out with Judy or Eric or whatever looking for Jayme, it's always, let's not tell Nancy till we know something, because I just want to protect her. I don't want her to go on a whim if it's not true over things that have been heard,
Mm-hmm.
I want them to find her more than anything, and I'll never leave their side until she's found. And I've always, for what, 3.5 years, I think, Nancy, I've been talking about, when Jayme comes home, we're going to have the biggest party ever.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Janet, the world needs more people like you. People who haven't, directly been affected by these disappearances. Jayme was not a family member, of course, not a daughter, not a niece or a sister or anybody. You never met her, but you were still volunteering to help out in any way you can. And, and may I say, in a couple cases, I think putting your own, I don't know if it's your life, but your physical well-being at risk, going down in some of these areas that you've been in, that you've told me about. The world needs more people like you. And I know that Nancy deeply appreciates all the work you've done so far.
Oh, yes, I do. I love her from the bottom of my heart and appreciate her. And I have met some truly wonderful people over, helping with Jayme's disappearance. But Janet has went above and beyond helping.
And will continue.
Thank you so much.
And Nancy, you've expressed, of course, what a lot of mothers have expressed who have been on the program, just the frustration, not knowing, frustration with the police. Are they doing enough? Or did they take it seriously enough? Maybe do you have anything else to say, regarding all of this?
I just appreciate all the help I can get. And, I've been led down some wrong roads, but it still didn't change my mind. I need my daughter home. And, she lived here for 22 years. You look around, you find a piece of notebook paper or something she had stuffed in a dresser drawer, or a long blonde hair. And, her memory is everywhere in this house. So I think that's what makes it super hard on me, is I've got her boy, and then there's bits and pieces of her just everywhere in this house. And I don't know, I think she's there. It's just a matter of getting her home. And I've learned so much about evil. I never knew there was so much out there. But I have people like Janet that helps me balance it out, keep me sane for another day.
Janet, why don't you tell the listeners where they can find information about Jayme's disappearance? There's a Facebook page, and is there anywhere else? Tell them about the Facebook page.
There is. It's called Bring Jayme Home, and anybody can, go in and sign in their name and get added onto that page. I put a lot of information in there too. Anything I find about trafficking or just anything, and people are more than welcome to send me a friend request. I do try to kind of screen people out, just to make sure that they're on the up and up. But yeah, I have told people, and I do mean it, I will go out on my own if I have to, and I'll do it alone. I've done it before. Was banging on a warehouse doors where I was told Jayme was kept, and yelling her name and beating on the doors, just trying to hear her if she was yelling for help in there. And it wasn't a very good area I was in. Yeah. But I will continue to do stuff like that, and to do anything just to find her. But they're welcome to send me a friend request, or they can go to Jayme. It's called Bring Jayme Home. That's her group.
Okay.
And they can be added in there and give information or whatever,
Okay.
or just watch and see what goes on, or try to help in any way that they're willing to. And in fact, I met several people from that group when I put up a long, long time ago, even the first time, about, if you know anything, please come forward, and I'll go do the legwork on my own. And I got a couple of friend requests from girls that, lived down there right off of Parsons, that wanted to go with me. They didn't want me to go alone. They was afraid and was willing to ride with me. And then and a lot of time I go with Judy, you know, and then I used to go with Eric, and Eric would go again in a heartbeat. All you got to do is just pick up the phone and call him. Eric is there for you.
So I said there's some wonderful people involved, and they all seem to have their own specialty at taking care of it.
Yes.
I'm just so lucky.
Well, Nancy, you know that you can call either of you, but specifically Nancy. Jan, of course, and I have been corresponding a lot. I don't think I even have to say that to her. But Nancy, I want you to know you can also personally contact me anytime. You know, I'll do what I can with my program. You know, we want to brainstorm some ideas, whatever you want to do. I'll be here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And, I mean, this is an example like you came out of nowhere to help and, you know, get Jayme's story out there for her and stuff.
You're welcome.
It's wonderful.
You're welcome.
Yes, you are a godsend, and honestly, you are.
Yes.
Thank you. It's very kind. Thank you.
And it's very sincere. We mean that.
Thank you.
We do.
And I appreciate both of you, Nancy and Janet, being on this episode of Unfound.
Okay, I'm
Thank
really
you
happy
so
that you invited us.
Yes.
You're welcome.
And that was my interview with Nancy Bowen, mother of Jayme Bowen, and Janet Common, friend of the Bowen family and amateur sleuth. 2 guests in 1 episode. That's a first for Unfound. I thank both of them for joining me and all of you on this episode. My studying for this episode took a lot longer than most of the others I've done for Unfound. I watched all of the Gone episodes, all 8 of them, at 43 minutes each. Then I had to learn as much as I could from 2 people, Janet and Nancy, instead of 1 like I usually do. On top of that, I had to look into all of these suspicious characters surrounding Jayme, Trey, Robert, and Dave to be specific. I went into this thinking Jayme's disappearance was a standalone crime, and after accumulating all of the information, trying to avoid confirmation bias, I still have no reason to believe that Jayme's disappearance is connected to the Chillicothe crimes at all. I'm going on the record to say that her disappearance is a standalone missing persons case like most of the others Unfound has covered, and it was perpetrated by someone who knew Jayme personally. In coming into this almost 4 years after Jayme disappeared, my perception is that the police have been following the wrong lead regarding Jayme's disappearance. The right lead is to look more closely at the people who surrounded her and not look at those Chillicothe crimes as being related to her disappearance. The right lead is to look at Columbus, specifically those people connected to the Parsons and Stewart intersection. So, who snatched Jayme? First, I should say that I don't believe the story the guy on the street told Janet 2 days after Jayme disappeared. It's a little too convenient. Happened on a crowded street and nobody else saw anything. He didn't alert the police, but then he'll tell a stranger, Janet, what he saw. It just doesn't add up, not to mention that 2 guys just happened to come by when Jayme is walking down the street. Nope, I don't believe it. So, to repeat the question, who snatched Jayme? Here's what sticks out to me. She took her sister's phone, but she never used it. Or did she? Remember, her mother said how Jayme would call her while walking, but seemingly Jayme didn't do that the day she disappeared. Why? Did her abduction happen so quickly that she didn't have time to? Very possible. But my perception is that when people, and I mean anybody, ask to borrow a phone, they already have an intent to call someone. They don't just do it just in case. They take the phone because their plan is to use the phone right away. So my belief is when Jayme left the house, she already had plans to call someone. Who? I'm not sure. But here's something else to consider. Was Jayme about to use the phone to call Robert Cincinnati, Dave Stelzer? And before she could dial the number, somebody called Kay's phone and Jayme answered. thus setting up Jayme's disappearance. Very possible. In fact, I like that scenario quite a bit. So, who could have called Kay's phone that morning? Either way, I think the lack of a phone call to Nancy from Jayme using Kay's phone is a huge clue in this disappearance. With that, I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a 5-star review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.